Another reason why I left religion, church, and fundamentalism is that about 1,700 priests and religious clergy have been accused of sex abuse, have been convicted when they were unsupervised. Some were known to be predators, some flew under the radar, some were moved around because they didn't want a scandal. This is what religion is. It's a potential cesspool for the U.S. or wherever, potential for predation, because there are few to no safeguards. There are churches out there that have gone to court to try and get out of mandatory reporting of sex abuse. Think about that. You will spend church money to prove and get out of fines or a criminal liability case because you don't want to mandatory report a horrendous multi-felony that some pervert either committed, you knew about it, you did it, you hid it, and you refuse to take accountability for it or to even punish the person. And just recently, the Assemblies of God, a church that my mother spent a few years in back before I was born in the 80s, has been recently called out against hundreds of sex abuse for CSA and SA against vulnerable people of any age, distinction, or background. It's a cesspool. I'm not saying that everyone in church is trying to sneak into your kid's bedroom or is touching kids before and during sermons. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the environment is rampant with these people. And the dynamics, religious, relationship dynamics, the hierarchy of authority, the male-centered, male-privileged dynamics, whether between members or between members and authority, is the best fertile soil for felonies of sex abuse to occur. There's no checks and balances. Few to far between are anyone held accountable, fired, or even arrested. I always make a joke that anybody Trump stands next to, is either a convicted felon, soon to be arrested, or is a predator of some distinction. It is not a surprise when somebody Trump appoints, trusts, and spends time with becomes a predator, or usually is unveiled of being a predator. White privileged people seldomly have any form of accountability. There are churches out there. Baptist is probably the most notorious of all Christian denominations. And for those who are wondering if there's a Christian denomination without sex abuse, there is not. And I'm not talking about denominations that we haven't heard of anything. There is not one Christian or under the umbrella of Protestant or Catholicism that hasn't had a rampant scandal of either covered up, ongoing trafficking, every denomination is notorious. Catholics will always be number one because it's been the biggest denomination of Christianity forever. Second would be under Protestantism. That would be Baptists. Third is United Methodists. But all denominations are rampant. Even ones that aren't under a hierarchy. We call them non-denominational, progressive, liberal. They're rampant too. Because any institution that is male-centered, specifically around white ethnicity, hetero privilege, that will fight and die on the hill of the patriarchy, gender roles. These are the environments that create, maintain, and protect predators. There's a reason why MAGA love Trump. They love protecting their child diddlers. And I'm using the word diddler because I don't want this video to be demonetized or flagged. So I'm going to use another word. Religious people religious environments attract narcissists, child molesters, the worst of the worst. Not everyone in church is a predator, any more than everybody at school is an awful predator. Luckily, very few people prey upon people. The PREY version, anyway. 95% of predators are men. 95% of them are hetero, cis men. 53% of them are white. What percentage of people who are trans, gay, bi, or anything that isn't strictly hetero, what percentage of those people are predators? Less than 5%. Okay? Less than 5%. About 6% are women. So, men do it 95% of the time. Cis heterosexuals, 95%. 5% are cis heterosexual women. And 1 to 5% are non-straight people who pray. And yet the church has the audacity to say the exact opposite. Gay people do not prey on kids, okay? They don't prey on kids. Less than 5% of gay people, and when I say gay, I mean all queer people. Less than 5% prey on kids. So when churches, they can't not know the statistics. They know deep down in their gut that the group of people most likely to offend, molest, rape, assault, groom are heterosexual, cis men of privilege, probably white. And yet they have the audacity to say it's a trans person who is sneaking into a bathroom, that they're going to hurt your kids, or that a gay person is a predator when they make up less than 5% of arrested and convicted pedophiles. Making priests be celibate their whole life doesn't make them offend. I have never had sex in 31 years. I'm cis and heterosexual. Not one time has being abstinent or celibate ever tempted me to harm a child. It's not the mandate for being abstinent that causes priests, reverends of any faith. That lifestyle does not cause people to prey on kids. Priests prey on kids because they want to, not because they can't have sex with women or consenting men. It's because they want it with children. It's modern time. I don't think anyone is going to fire a man for having sex with a woman when he's a priest. place that is like the Vatican. They're just not going to anymore. It's not that important. Not having sex with people based on Catholic or extreme versions of religious expectations don't make adult men go after kids. It's because they want kids. That's what it is. And I was told my entire life by Baptist fundamentalist parents that if priests were allowed to get married and have families, they wouldn't prey on kids. Now that I know certain things, the majority of men, well, the group of people that are most likely to harm a child or a vulnerable woman of any age is a family man, a cis heterosexual man. It's the same kind of man who becomes a serial killer. A man with a family between 21 and 45 years of age who is privileged, probably white, and is in a position of authority. All churches have to do is acknowledge that there is a rampant sex abuse problem. Teach everyone in positions of authority and members that if anything like this, and they could teach people what grooming looks like and what inappropriate relationships are. Churches are not responsible if someone that has no criminal history, who they've done a background check on, who has no symptoms of being a bad person, commits a crime. The church is not responsible for everything somebody does, especially someone who's shown no prior history, whether of someone complaining or an actual rap sheet. They're not responsible. They do become legally and morally responsible when they find out that it's going on. They don't nip it in the bud. They don't fire. They do not arrest them or call certain people to have them arrested and convicted. That's when it becomes a crime. They hide it. They move people around to new unsuspecting groups and parishes and church communities so they can reoffend. Do you actually believe that moving a sex offender to a new area that doesn't know that it's going on or could happen there is going to make somebody think, I'm not going to offend? It's like taking someone who has all the fishermen lures and equipment, taking them from a known fishing spot and putting them in another fishing spot that is known to have a lot of success in fishing, putting a fisherman with the equipment, the know-how, the experience, putting them in another fishing spot and expecting them not to fish. If they don't fish and prey on kids, I would be shocked. Churches will always protect, enable, hide, stonewall, threaten. They will always cover the backs of sex offenders. If a church actually supports the victims, sequesters the victims, protects them, and immediately calls the police and makes the situation safe again, I am shocked. I'm pleased, but I'm shocked. I have read where over 700 cases in the Baptist church where I didn't grow up in a church that did that, but I did know a few people that had escaped grooming situations. I am not shocked. I cannot believe my parents put me in that environment to possibly be hurt. My parents could not have been so naive that they actually thought that this could not happen. The thing that's more terrifying than meeting a bad person is realizing that your parents had no intention of protecting you. My own mother admitted we had to go somewhere. No, we don't. You don't have to go to church. It's not water, food, and shelter. You don't have to go anywhere. And if you know that they knew that it happens in Catholic churches, they cannot be naive and think that it never ventures beyond a Catholic church. My parents did not protect me. They did not teach me what grooming was, how people lure kids, how to protect myself. My parents did everything they could to shut down conversations where I could be intimate and open and talk about hard topics. There was no open door policy in our home. You did not ask questions to my parents. My parents told me nothing on how to protect myself and what bad adults look like, how they act, and how they plot to do certain things. They indoctrinated me to believe that church authority actually protects me. It doesn't. I'm in therapy to work through the awful, awful things. Just because I was never molested or victimized does not mean I don't have PTSD. Realizing that I grew up in the denomination with the highest child sex abuse and SA of any Protestant denomination is enough to give anybody PTSD. Knowing that somebody I was in Sunday school with had to be removed from a church, another Baptist church, because an adult was trying to groom them. And they were barely teenagers. That is enough to give you PTSD. I grew up in an environment that did not believe PTSD was real and that therapy was vital in overcoming and facing emotional and psychological disturbances. My parents believed that if you did not go to church, you were very close to going to hell. You don't have to go to church. And my mother would always say, well, this is the best church there is. That's like saying, when someone asks, why did you marry this person? Well, they were the least of the bad evils. That doesn't mean you stay. It does not mean that's a good place to even consider being in. Just because it's the best of everything around doesn't mean it's good. And the 7 churches I went to as a child in 3 major denominations tore themselves apart. And I made a previous video on how they tore themselves apart. These churches would plant adult pornography on the pastor's computer. So they would get fired. And that this person who did that, who planted the evidence, which was falsified, would get their job. I've been in churches that spread rumors about affairs that were not going on to destroy someone's reputation. The men in most of these churches were devoid of compassion. They had no ability to be a faithful, loving spouse, if that's what you're into. Not everyone wants monogamy. But if you swear in front of 100 people that you are going to be monogamous and hetero, you live up to it, or you have a conversation, or you leave. These people would have second families, or love child, or a completely different apartment the wife didn't know about. This is the environment I was raised in. Utter hypocrisy. Just devoid of compassion, kindness, and just the basics of civility. My own parents won't even ask me if I'm okay after coming out. strangers I've never met online were kinder than my own family. And the meanest people on the internet are Christians. Every time somebody leaves a hateful comment on these videos, it's a Christian. And I delete them because I don't want that kind of bad energy on my account. I don't want innocent, vulnerable people looking through the comments and seeing such hate, such gaslighting. Churches thrive on enabling and being complicit in sex abuse. No good a church does, whether donating, feeding the poor, helping, assisting, will ever make up for the devoid of compassion for children who didn't make it. There are thousands of children who were abused in churches or in religious institutions that took their own lives because of this kind of behavior. The stonewalling, the evasive language, the threats, the intimidation. Even John MacArthur publicly humiliated a wife who found out her husband was cheating with multiple women, who hit her, and who was later convicted of child sex abuse against other children outside his family. And she was still shamed for leaving him and divorcing him, for being an utter shitty human being and a predator. She was still shamed from the pulpit for daring to not obey a pastor who told her to go home and submit. You don't submit to predators. And why anyone would talk to their pastor before the police is alarming. And I'm not shaming survivors and people who found out that their loved ones got hurt. Go to the police first. When you get poisoned, when you get hurt, you don't call your family first. You call 911. The church will never consistently protect you. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to document. You have to hold these pieces of crap, whether they've preyed or protected predators. You have to hold them accountable. And some victims and their families, they never see these stonewallers, these gaslighters, these protectors of predators ever spend one day after they're convicted in prison. They do not take accountability. And the few that somehow find the words to show accountability, it's too late. Once a child's innocence or a vulnerable woman's innocence is taken, it's too late. You can't prevent abuse that's already happened. You can keep it from happening again. And churches, if there was an award to give someone for being the most consistent protector of predators, it would go to Christianity. And I'm glad there's no awards. But if there was, Christianity would win every year. MAGA, the ultra-religious group, no wonder they love Trump. No wonder they love rapists. Their religion taught them how to create the next generation of rapists, how to protect them. And if you've ever heard of 19 Kids and Counting, the Duggar family, I wasn't shocked when Josh was unveiled to be a predator. I'm shocked when there isn't one in every church. I was told by my therapist, on average, there is one predator for every 33 men in church. That meant there was a minimum of 2 to the max of 4 for every church I was in. And the mega church I went to in Anchorage probably had about 7, because there were about 500 of them. 500 men in there. I'm glad I never knew that Southern Baptist has the worst sex offender registry when it comes to Christian denominations. Because I would not have slept at night on Saturday night before I go to church on Sunday. It is a miracle that nobody I knew was harmed. We were harmed, just not sexual abuse. And you can have PTSD from realizing that the denomination you spent 20 years of your life in is the most unsafe and the most consistent at throwing sex abuse survivors under a bus, metaphorically speaking. And the only reason they ever have accountability or change is so they don't lose more money. You may not realize this, but there is actual sex abuse insurance for churches. So if somehow they don't handle it properly, because they're not going to, they can actually protect themselves from lawsuits by having sex abuse insurance. There are churches out there, I'm not going to say which ones because I've forgotten, that can't even get sex abuse insurance prevention because they're known for having too many lawsuits already. So no insurance company will offer them insurance because they're a liability. Wise parents, don't ever put your kids anywhere near any institution that is patriarchal or Christian. Any religious environment is rampant in harm against children. And it's not the lack of getting married or the lack of having sex. Even if priests could get married and have a normal heterosexual or homosexual relationship with an adult, they would still target kids because this is who they are. They don't hurt kids because they can't do it with an adult. It's just who they are. It's who they love being, and they're monsters. But it's not the trans person. It's not the gay person. It's not the bi. It's not the non-binary or the asexual that harms your kids 95% of the time. They commit it 5% or less. I mean, it's almost non-existent. Queer people just don't prey on people. Trans people don't go into bathrooms to prey on people. It's the cis, heterosexual, straight man, usually white, who's privileged. And he doesn't put on a dress to go into a bathroom or a classroom to harm kids. He takes up religion or the patriarchy to get away with his crimes. And the church, they want to know where to metaphorically sign so they can make sure he never gets caught. And if he does get caught, they will do everything they can to stop it, prevent it, and never acknowledge they ever knew it. Because that's what Christianity really is. And the 3 places with the most child abuse? Well, let's say the top 4. The home, the church, school, or the military. And the more patriarchal, religious you are, the more likely you will explain away people who prey on kids. And if the relationship is unprofessional, inappropriate, and there's a big age difference or life experience, that's preying. A 30-year-old pastor preying on a 25-year-old parishioner, that is being a predator. There's a power imbalance. You don't even have to be a kid to be preyed on. If any man or woman who pursues you romantically or sexually is in a position of power, secularly or religiously, that is being a predator. It's as much predation as going after a child. No pastor should ever date or hook up with anyone in their church or anyone who holds them in high esteem due to his position. It's inappropriate. Any power imbalance is inappropriate. No teacher, no mentor, no Sunday school teacher should ever date or be in any way associated with anybody who's in their class, in their church. You just don't do it. If two members who have no authority, who have similar life experience, want to date, fine. But leaders, do not do it inside your own church. That is being a predator. And just because your victim is legal doesn't make it ethical, professional, or decent. It's the Clinton and Monica Lewinsky scenario. It may be legal, but it is predatory. So stop doing it. Churches love to keep women in an unsafe environment. They love teaching kids to obey the authorities because the authorities really won't protect you. Churches are like human resources. They don't care about you. They care about making sure you don't sue them. We call it stonewalling for a reason. And some people have to wait 30 years before Trump's televangelist friend gets sent to prison for harming kids. Who you spend time with, who you endorse, who you support, that's who you are. If you support a rapist and a child molester who's best friends with Epstein, and most of your friends are predators, that makes you a predator adjacent. That's why I will not be friends or spend time with people who support Trump. I would not leave my kids alone with them. Who you support is who you really are. You may not be hurting kids, but you might as well be. Because people who elect and keep predators in power are worse than the predators. Predators couldn't pray if there wasn't a complicit, silent, stupid, and intentionally cruel wife, pastor, or somebody in authority. And that's what everyone has to live with. The knowledge that the more white you are, the more religious you are, the more privileged you are, the more likelihood you'll have to leave church because that's the only way you can protect your kids. And if parishioners can't stop it, they just move them to another place. And God help the next church that has to deal with it. Religion loves predators. Hell, they voted for one. They voted for Trump. A judge said he's a rapist. Anyone who supports the Republican Party, Trump, and MAGA supports and enables predators. And for a predator to hold up a Bible and sell it like Trump did tells you why to avoid Christianity and religion as much as you would syphilis. Because some things you just can't get away from. And it's not worth it. Parents should not take kids to church because, we have to go somewhere. If it's not safe and you don't tell your kids how to protect themselves, you are a predator enabler. Personally, I think parents like that should lose custody of their kids. We call it child endangerment. Taking your child to the Christian denomination with almost 1,000 cases of sex abuse cover-ups. Awful, completely awful parent I had. Thank goodness nothing happened, or I'd be suing my parents. And a lot of people, the only way to get justice, because these pieces of shit who protect predators won't spend a day in jail. You have to sue them in civil court to gain some closure, accountability, and restoration. America has a predator problem. And when the biggest institutions of white privilege protect predators endorse them for president and cheer when rapists are in the White House. It's not a shock. It's just consistent behavior.